We're out in the soybean field and we wanted to bring a little bit of hope to you because we have so many calls and emails all the time throughout the year, guys giving up on soybeans because, man, we've got these spots out there that just turn yellow and I can't get any yield. What can I do?
Well, first of all, you've got to identify what the yellow problem is. Now, it could be nutrients, it could be disease, it could be insects, it could be a number of different things out there. So you got to figure out what the yellow problem is first. So cyst nematodes are very common all across the country, but our main topic and what we really wanted to focus on today was iron deficiency chlorosis. So how do you distinguish between the two?
Okay, well, one of the first things that I'll look at on a soybean plant, if we do have iron deficiency chlorosis, is we'll see it on the upper leaves of the plant, and what we'll see is green veins with yellow plant tissue in between. That's a great sign that you do have iron deficiency chlorosis.
Okay, so that's iron chlorosis. Now how do you tell if it's cyst nematode?
Well, with cyst nematode, you won't always see yellowing above ground. You can have cyst nematode problems and the beans will look green and just fine above ground. But sometimes when it gets really serious, you'll start to see some yellowing around the edges of the leaf first, and eventually you could go all the way to completely dead plants too if you've got really, really heavy cyst nematode pressure.
And the other thing with cyst nematodes is you can dig the plant up and you can actually find the cysts, especially in the middle of the summer. You can find the cysts on the roots.
They are very tiny, Brian. You know, some gray-haired people may need to have some reading glasses or a magnifying glass. Just a tip, Brian.
Anyway, moving on with these yellow beans, if you do happen to have those, and let's say that it is iron chlorosis, the thing is, when we talk about iron deficiency chlorosis, it doesn't necessarily mean that your field or your soil lacks iron. What it is a symptom that appears to be a iron deficiency, and it really is iron deficiency in the plant. The problem is the plant can't extract that iron from the soil and actually use that iron. So the reason why this all happens is generally because of two things. It's high pH and high salt loads. So if you've got high pH levels and you have high salt, I can almost guarantee you're going to have some big yellow spots out in your field. So, you know, a lot of people like to treat the symptoms and say, well, you know, if I'm going to have iron chlorosis, maybe I need to get some different beans that are better on IDC. And, you know, that's great. You need to do that in the short term. But how are we going to fix that problem long term? That's what I want to focus on.
Well, a few things that I would say too. We've done a lot of plant tissue testing in soybeans. A few years ago, we did tests across a 5-state region, hundreds of tests, and we didn't find any iron deficiency at all in soybeans, which to me was really surprising because you can just see this iron deficiency chlorosis in a number of fields. What we did see is high levels of iron. There was actually iron getting into the plant, but the plant couldn't utilize that iron. The other thing that we noticed was high levels of nitrogen, and most notably, University of Minnesota has documented this, that high levels of nitrates in certain areas of the field can lead to more pronounced iron deficiency chlorosis symptoms as well.
Okay, so let's talk about all three of these things that we've mentioned that can lead you to the iron deficiency chlorosis. First of all, you pretty much have to have high pH. If you have high salt, you're more likely to have iron chlorosis. And like Darren said, high nitrates. Let's think about all three of those things. Okay, all three of those things can be improved with drainage. If you have better drainage, the nitrates will not be hanging up in your soil. The salt levels will not be hanging up in your soil. They will move down with water and proper drainage. And it's the same thing with soil pH. A lot of people will say, oh, there's nothing I can do with high pH. In most cases, I'm not saying in every case, but in most cases, if you improve your soil drainage, you will drop your pH. I can give you an example off of our farm. I've got some ground that I bought about 7-8 years ago. I've dropped the pH over a full point now, and it's just from tiling, improving the drainage out there, and also doing some zone building too. So if you want to improve this thing for the long term, you want to fix those yellow areas of the field, if they are from iron chlorosis, improve your drainage, get some tiling done, get some zone building done. And you know what? 5 years from now, hopefully you won't be looking at those yellow spots at all.
That is the challenge. It isn't something, once you've got a big problem out there, it didn't happen overnight. It took years for that to develop. It's going to take a few years for it to get fixed as well. But if you don't start right now, it's never going to improve. Now, there are some things that you can do for this year to try and get things to be a little bit better, or for next year if you've already got all the crop in and everything's up and looks decent. What you can do first of all is pick a little different variety. I work with a number of different breeders in the industry that have been selecting plants for iron deficiency chlorosis tolerance or for high pH, high salt load type tolerance. And what they're doing is they're planting soybeans into these really bad spots that normally beans can barely live, they'll all turn yellow, and they just look for any green plants out there at all. And when they see some green plants, those are the ones they select to move forward. Now oftentimes it's just a few seeds that they can get, but then the next year they plant those few seeds and they get a bunch more and a bunch more, and it doesn't take very long, and we see much better tolerance to iron deficiency chlorosis. So if you shop around just a little bit, look at the different seed companies and the offerings that they have, you can compare varieties and find some that yield very well but also have decent tolerance.
A couple other little tricks that you could use is planting at a higher population. Instead of 150 or 180,000, plant at 250 or 350,000 plants per acre. That
just
will
in those
improve
spots.
things.
That's the big thing. You say, oh boy, I don't want to spend that much money on my whole farm, and you don't have to. If you can do some variable rate seeding, or if you can just turn around and go back through and lay another row through those areas, something just to get more seed in those pockets.
Another thing we've seen is where tire tracks are, we a lot of times have greener beans. So if you want to make tire tracks everywhere, get a roller and roll your beans right after you've planted them. You may have slightly more green beans. Now both of these things, you know, I'm not saying this is the solution or anything else, but hopefully this could help a little bit this year. We've also had a lot of people trying to foliar feed iron. We haven't seen real positive, consistent results from that. It's something you can try to maybe green up your beans a little bit. But again, you know, we're talking about working on the symptoms here. If you want to look at the root cause of this thing, a lot of times it's because of poor drainage why you have yellow beans if it's iron chlorosis out there. So improve your drainage and you should have nice green beans in the future.
Now one other thing that I would mention is a lot of times it's just pockets in the field where we see this IDC. So you may be telling yourself, hey, it's no big deal, it's just this little spot here and this little spot there. But you know what? When you add all those little spots up on your whole farm, it amounts to a lot of acres and a lot of dollars.
Well, not only that, but minor iron deficiency chlorosis can hurt your yield as well. So you might not see a lot of yellowing across your whole field, but maybe it's getting hurt 2 bushels, or maybe it's getting hurt 5 bushels. So you got to work on fixing this thing, and if you're seeing bad yellow spots, chances are that's extending out from that area in terms of yield reduction as well.
Well, iron deficiency chlorosis is a serious problem in soybean production in the United States, but another big problem is weed control. We'll show you how to kill this tough weed later in the show.